Bloody technology.
Getting it sorted. Oh, no.
Apologies, everyone, if you are watching this. I have a feeling, though, I have a feeling it's not dropped us into the event we were supposed to be in.
Nope, we're there.
We're there.
We're here. Yeah.
Okay, so, wow. My internet connection died. That was really weird. That's never happened to me before. I'm very sorry about that, folks. But we're back. Okay, as I was saying, welcome to an interrupted episode 3. And Ron says we're live. Hey, Ron, how you doing? And Peter was there earlier. Pat, we're live. Thanks very much. Okay, we're seeing comments coming in. Oh, man, I had a huge panic attack there when everything just went dead on me for a second. And my internet connection went down. Like I said, it's never happened before. Anyway, on with the show. Welcome to episode 3. It is Tuesday.
Yep.
It is the 26th of January. 5 p.m. CET, 4 p.m. for Chris in Ireland.
It is indeed.
If you're in the US East Coast, it is 11 a.m., 8 a.m. on the West Coast, and wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. And again, apologies for the brief interruption at the start. This is show number 3. We're still getting the technology ironed out, it seems.
It's a good thing we both work in technology.
Yeah. Do you know anyone who knows anything about technology there, Chris, that we could call? Oh boy. So we have a couple of comments, as I said, from Pat and Ron. Peter dropped a comment earlier before we dropped out, and we seem to have lost that. Sorry about that, Peter, but do feel free to come back and comment again if you haven't run away in disgust at our horrendous ineptness. We have some interesting stories lined up for you today, folks. Thank you for joining us. As always on the Tech for Good show, we like to start with a climate story or two.
Yep.
And the first one I wanted to bring up was this one from Ernst & Young. And, some of you will know, I run a podcast called the Climate 21 podcast. It goes out every Wednesday, so expect an episode tomorrow morning. And on that, I interview people from organizations to share their successful climate reduction stories and strategies in order to educate and inspire people to kind of follow and do similar things. And I had Lucas Joppa, the Chief Environmental Officer of Microsoft, on a few weeks ago. Really fascinating episode. If you haven't checked it out, you should. And one of the things that they're doing in Microsoft is they are going climate negative. And this was one of the first organizations I'd come across that were, saying they're going climate negative. And Microsoft are taking it even further. They're saying that they're going to take out of the atmosphere all of the emissions they have ever put into it since they started business in 1975, which is hugely ambitious. And they put all kinds of money aside to help get there. But now I see, and this is what this story is, Ernst & Young have now said that they are starting this year going to go climate negative and that they'll be net zero by 2025. So kudos to Ernst & Young. Again, hugely ambitious. Yep. As always, this evening, or more than likely tomorrow morning, I will update this LinkedIn live post on LinkedIn with a link to the slides that I'm showing here now. And those slides will have in the notes, they will have links to the source articles. So you will have, you'll be able to find these easily enough if you can wait until tomorrow. If not, a quick Google will probably find them for you. But kudos to Ernst & Young. I thought that was really good, and I must get someone on. In fact, I've reached out to Ernst & Young to try and get someone from there to come on the Climate 21 podcast. So we'll see if we can have that come up in the next few weeks. I saw these two related stories, kind of semi-related stories. This one first, and the next one. The Keeling Curve Prize. If you're unfamiliar with the Keeling Curve was it's the graph of CO2 in the atmosphere that has been constantly measured in Mauna Loa, hope I'm pronouncing that right, in Hawaii since the late 1950s. It's the world's longest running consistent scientific experiment. It was set up by a guy called Charles Keeling, a geophysicist out of the Scripps Institute in San Diego, and it's now being run by his son. He died, I think Charles Keeling died in 2005, if memory serves, and now his son, curiously, has taken it over and is still running it. And the Keeling curve, obviously, it's an upward curve. What is the Keeling curve price? This is a $25,000 cash prize. What?
It's 250,000.
Is it? Oops, I read it wrong.
Oh no, sorry. Awards 250,000 annually to 10 of these solutions. Sorry, yes, so it's 25,000 each.
So yeah, $25,000 prizes for people who come up with the best ways, presumably technologically, to help get rid of carbon out of the atmosphere, essentially. So we want to flatten that Keeling curve. And one of the reasons I brought this up was because obviously when I was talking to Lucas Joppa in Microsoft, he mentioned that they've put a shed load of money aside as well. In their case, it was $1 billion to invest in people who are doing climate mitigation, because they want to go carbon negative and they want to pull all the carbon out of the atmosphere, but the technology to do that doesn't exist. So hence they've put aside this $1 billion to invest in companies who are doing this. This Keeling curve prize is another way of incentivizing research in this space. And then, as I say, semi-related, the next story is Elon Musk has put aside $100 million as a prize for a new carbon capture technology as well. So, if you know anything about capturing carbon, this would be a good time to start looking at these things, because there's money in them there hills, as they say.
There really is. There really, really is.
So go on. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, actually, it's one of those things. When you see people actually creating these prizes and doing these, making these commitments and putting hard money on the table, that's when things start to go mainstream, and this direction is here to stay. So it is, and that's absolutely critical, because otherwise it's just PowerPoint slides and things like that. And one of the reasons why EY is really interesting is because this is an organization that consults at the highest level of governments across the world. Mm-hmm. And if they have this forefront in their mind, it's going to become the drive to push it to government policy, to heavy, to multinational industry policies and things like that is not that far away. And so when you see the money, when you see the influence all moving in this direction, it's effectively, it's a fait accompli. It's, the drive and the will is now, is there and reinforcing and then self-reinforcing every single day. It's brilliant.
It is. It really is. And, as you say, they advise to governments, but they also advise to lots of large companies. And I think it's important. It's important as well, because this is becoming more and more a boardroom issue for companies, because, and we will see some of this, and I've spoken about some of this before, more and more investment money is fleeing risky propositions like carbon intensive industries and carbon intensive projects. And so because of that, it's more important for companies to make sure that anything they do is low carbon if they want to secure any kind of investment at all. So to your point, EY will be helping companies as well as governments, and the expertise they gain from doing it themselves will certainly help them. It'll show them as exemplars and enablers, to use the SAP term. Yep,
absolutely.
The energy space, we have quite a few stories from both energy and transportation this week. We'll do the energy ones first. We saw that the global investments in the energy transition movement have topped $500 million globally for the first time in 2020. I think they went to 501 point something, so just scraped over the $500 million mark. But it's
still over. It's still over. That's the main thing.
It is. And you can see huge investments there in renewable energy, for example, and increasing investments in electrified transportation. Some also in CCS, and we need to increase that CCS portion of it. And that's the main three there: the transportation, the renewables. There's electrified heat as well. That's another one. Electrified heat is important for industry who want to get away from burning fossil fuels to create heat for industrial processes like smelting steel and aluminium and things like that as well. So huge money going into this space. And again, like I say, I'll be publishing these slides with the links to them. 2020 was another landmark year for renewables, with renewables topping fossil fuels in Europe for the first time, with 38.2% of the energy in Europe in 2020 being generated by by renewables. Fossil fuels came in at 37%, so just pipped by renewables for the first time. And it's not just Europe as a whole. Several countries within Europe, if I remember correctly, Spain, Germany, and the UK, for example, were ones where the renewables beat out fossil fuels comprehensively. So, and this is not going to go back. This is just going to go forward as we're building out more renewables and retiring fossil fuel plants. This is going to be more and more the norm. We're seeing China added 72 gigawatts of wind in 2020 and another 38 gigawatts of solar. So, that's 120 gigawatts of renewables. And for people who are unaware, a gigawatt is the output of a nuclear power plant. So 120 nuclear power plants. What?
I was going to ask to drive the point to say a gigawatt is the size of a nuclear power plant. In which case, they've just added the equivalent of 72 nuclear power plants built in a fraction of the time as the UK plants that are going up at the moment that are having financial difficulties with, I think it's EDF and the UK government.
That's
so
right.
It is.
That's
It boggles me. It boggles me that we're still trying to do these massive projects when these renewable energy projects are so much more achievable and attainable.
It's renewables are cheap and quick. You can get a renewable generation facility up from planning to generation in under 2 years typically. Whereas, the Hinkley C plant in the UK, which is a 3-reactor nuclear power plant rated when it's completed to about 3.5 gigawatts, that's been on the drawing board and on the plans, and I don't know if they've broken ground, but it's at least 10 years in the making at this point, and it'll be another 10 years before the first electrons ship out of there. So, that's 20 years for a 3.5 gigawatt nuclear facility, and it's way over budget. And it's going to be tens of millions over budget, whereas, as I say, China added 120 gigawatts from wind and solar in 1 year. 120 gigawatts from wind and solar in 1 year. So renewables scale and are cheap. Nuclear doesn't. I'm not saying there's not a place for nuclear. I'm sure there is, but it's got a niche place, if any.
The bit that I find interesting around nuclear is actually it's the thorium, the micro generation thorium reactors are very, very interesting, and I think have a place in the kit bag, but the likes of Hinkley just doesn't stack for me.
Yeah, and I've yet to see anywhere being able to create thorium reactors at scale. It hasn't happened. So, people have been talking about it for a long time, the same way they've been talking about nuclear fusion for a long time. So, maybe.
But it's only 10 years away. I think they actually got it down to 7 years not that long ago.
Already, it's getting closer.
Yeah, okay. But I think it went back up to 10.
So I thought this one was a fascinating story. Werner Hoyer, who's president of the European Investment Bank, has said that the age of gas is over. I mean, we all know coal is dead. We've known coal is dead for a long time, but now the president of the European Investment Bank at their main meeting, their 2020 meeting, has said that gas is dead. And the European Investment Bank is the one that puts investment, it puts money into these projects. And he, as president, has said, no more. We're not putting any more money into gas either. And again, it's down to what I said already. It's down to the fact that gas is high carbon and therefore risky. If you invest money into a gas plant and it's, regulations change in 5 years' time to say shut down all gas plants, then bang, your investment is gone. So they're not going to be investing anymore. And let's see, Rajesh there has said China also seemed to be building 120 gigawatts of new coal plants as of 2019. Yes and no, Rajesh. I saw that as well, but I saw subsequent reports saying that a lot of those coal plants never made it off the drawing board. They are still building coal plants. You're absolutely right, but not as many as they had planned to. A lot of China's regulations, and particularly since they've announced now that they're going net zero by 2060, a lot of those coal plants will never make it off the drawing board. So let's see. Where are we going next? Total. Yeah, Total going big on solar energy. And this is huge. And we'll have another story similar to this shortly. But we're seeing a lot of the huge oil and gas companies realizing that the age of oil and gas is over. Fossil fuels are over. And so they are announcing plans to go net zero by X date. BP, Shell, Repsol, Total, I think, have all announced plans to go net zero by 2050. Whether it goes out to scope 3 or not is still up for debate. But Total are going long now as well on solar. They've had several big investments that they've announced, including this one where they're buying a 20% stake in Adani Green Energy, which is an Indian firm. And that's interesting because India has huge plans to build out renewables and solar in particular. And we talked a couple of weeks ago about this 35 gigawatt renewable park that they're building in India on the west coast. So this now with Total buying a 20% stake in Adani means that they will have part of that action, part of the action in India, where there is going to be a huge amount of renewables built in the coming years. So it's a very wise investment on their part, you have to think.
Does this cover manufacturing? Does it cover manufacturing as well as installation? I can't remember. Yeah. Because it's because that's the manufacturing is where big oil is going for is obviously is picking up the actuals, the manufacturing and owning it end to end, the way they did with oil. So it is rather than just being a distributor. So when you see them buying custom companies like this, again, it's shows that they're serious.
Yeah, no, they want to they want to own the whole ecosystem, everything from the build out of the turbines if it's wind, etc. So Peter's back. I think what you're saying there, Peter, is that when we went offline, you lost us, but you found us again. I think that's what you're referring to there. Marta is asking, what transition plans do these oil and gas have to minimize the negative impact of their move to net zero, job losses, etc.? Do you know? It's easier said than done. Yeah, I honestly, I don't know, Marta, but and it's not a question I have asked, but I will have some oil execs coming on the Climate 21 podcast, so it's a question I will ask them. You have to think, though, that because it's now 2021, the net zero aim for these is 2050, so that gives them 29 years. So a lot of that will, occur through natural attrition of the workforce, I imagine. So I don't know, but yeah, it's a good question, and I will indeed ask the guests that are coming up on the Climate 21 podcast. If you're watching, you have been warned. So have a good answer ready. And I said related because the last one was Total, the French energy company. Now we have Shell, the Dutch energy company. And I had Hubert Vigevno from Shell's executive board on the Climate 21 podcast a few weeks ago, just before Christmas. Really interesting episode there. Now Shell are buying Ubitricity. Ubitricity are the largest EV, electric vehicle charging network in the UK. If you're unfamiliar with them, they're really interesting. They've converted a lot of streetlights into electric vehicle charging points. And of course, it's a beautiful idea because lots of people, not just in the UK, but lots of people who want to buy an EV might feel constricted because it's, hard to find a charger if you don't have, a driveway. And most streets, nearly all streets, have streetlights. And the streetlights have electricity going to them. And very many streetlights don't require the amount of electricity that they have been wired for, because many of them were wired for sodium lights and are now using LEDs, which use far less electricity. So, it's perfect. So Ubitricity have taken this and converted many of the streetlights in London, probably other places as well, but I'm familiar with London. They've converted many of the streetlights in London to EV charge points, which is, I think it's a superb idea. And now Shell have swooped in and bought them out. And BP bought a charging network a couple of years ago. So, the BP own something like 12% of the charge points in the UK. Shell now owns about 13%, so just ahead of them. So the oil and gas companies, again, back to your point, end to end, they've realized that they need to switch from selling molecules to selling electrons. Charles is asking, what exactly is the push for moving natural gas from consumers to suppliers? Does that really help?
I don't quite understand the question.
Neither do I. The push for moving natural gas from consumers to suppliers. Charles, sorry, I don't understand the question, Charles. I think we just shut down natural gas altogether. I don't want to move it to suppliers or to consumers or to anyone. I want to completely shut it down because it's a huge source of pollution. The natural gas infrastructure leaks methane at a horrendous rate. So I think that should be completely shut down. Now, I know it's not going to happen overnight, but if it doesn't get investment from, agencies like the European Investment Bank, it's going to have a hard time growing anyway, anytime soon.
Yeah. And frequently, actually, the methane, the methane leakage is underestimated. I remember actually, the satellite, they tasked one of the Landsat satellites to look at one of the pipelines that had recently been decommissioned in the US, and they found that it was still leaking methane, years after it actually been taken out, and the actual amount of methane was more than they had anticipated by a factor of 4. And that's just it's absolutely crazy. So it is absolutely crazy, and it's just. Even taking the environmental argument out of it, the loss of money just from the leakage in its own right, you sit and you think, are you sure you couldn't do this better? But yeah, it is crazy. But the purchase of the charging points is fascinating, because I know that Shell, at the end of last year, they had there was a lot of frustration within Shell over the pace of their change.
Yeah, and executives left.
Yeah, which is disappointing. But when you see moves like this, you think perhaps some people got the message, and it's provided them the kick to make it work faster.
In fact, that story about the executives leaving Shell out of frustration broke on the morning that my Climate 21 podcast with Hubert Vigevno, the Shell EVP, was published. It was the same morning. It was that Wednesday morning. Was it the 9th? 9th of December, I think. I can't remember. 2nd or 9th. It
so.
was early December anyway. We have a few
Yeah.
comments there. VJ is saying very few IT companies have got charge points. Yeah. I was in the SAP offices in Bangalore a couple of years ago, and they had charge points for EVs there. It was nice to see. But yeah, I can understand very few are there to date. And Raghu is saying hi. Hi, Raghu. How are we doing? Okay, back to the stories. So, transportation, because we kind of bumped up against it there in the last energy story. And we have some interesting ones there. So, Lion Electric, a Canadian company, I think, or are they American? They're North American anyway, whether they're US or Canadian. They've won a big order for 60 electric school buses. I think it's first line there, it says Canadians Lion Electric, so it is a Canadian company. Yep. I didn't dream it up. So they've got an order for 60 electric buses, which is their largest ever order. Electric buses, I think they're a fantastic idea. Electric school buses, at least. Well, electric buses in general are a superb idea. School buses are particularly good because you don't want your kids to be going to school. If they're going to school in a school bus, you don't want them going to school in a diesel bus, which is spewing out horrendous fumes out the back of the tailpipe or leaking into the bus itself while your kids are in it, because, they've got developing lungs it's just a horrible idea. So switching a school bus fleet to electric makes a ton of sense just for that reason alone. Another cool reason for doing it, of course, is the fact that the school buses operate twice a day, morning to take the kids to school and evening to bring them home from school. The rest of the time they're lying idle. So use them as as a virtual power plant. Makes a ton of sense. So they can be making money while they're not bringing the kids to and from school. So I think the business case for doing that is absolutely perfect. Never mind the moral case for doing it. So I think that's a great one. And I think school buses will flip to electric really, really quickly. Particularly in places like the US with the stimulus plans post-COVID, and with the Biden administration, I'd say we'll see a lot of that.
Exactly.
Scania have said that they are going all in basically on battery electric vehicles for their trucks, even their long range 40-ton 18-wheeler trucks. The technology is there to do it today. They are walking away from their efforts in hydrogen. They're saying, look, hydrogen just not worth the effort. Hydrogen trucks are expensive, complicated, and they had a third reason for walking away from it as well. But so hydrogen not going to work for Scania anyway, and Scania are part of Volkswagen Group, so they are walking away from that, and they won't be the only ones. We'll see more and more large truck companies shifting to battery rather than hydrogen, because hydrogen makes no sense in transportation, not for trucks and buses anyway.
It was the other reason was it was the servicing, so it was over the hydrogen one. So it reduces the cost per hour to operate the piece of equipment. And one of the things that's interesting is that is a key metric for things like the military. The cost per hour is absolutely critical when they start to look at changing infrastructure. So it is. So
the other reason I remember as well is they say that the energy requirement to move a bus a mile is 3x with a hydrogen bus what it is for a purely electric bus. So it takes 3 times the amount of energy. Yeah. It's because hydrogen is massively inefficient in transportation. So because it takes 3 times the amount of energy, they're saying, no, we're not touching that, thanks. So I see Daria in the comments there. Hi, everyone. First time on the live stream. Welcome, Daria. Thanks a million for joining us. And you say you've been following the Climate 21 podcast. Good for you. Tell all your friends.
Exactly.
I gotta say, I'm loving doing the Climate 21 podcast, and I'm also loving the fact that the amount of downloads is going up and up and up and up like that. So it's great. So thank you for that. It's great. Hi from PL. PL is Poland, I'm guessing.
Poland.
Yeah. So hi, Bartosz. Yes, Bartosz, you recognize the name. Yes. Hi, Bartosz. How you doing? Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Nicola is a dead company walking, Ron. It is, absolutely. Nicola has had all kinds of problems. Problems with the CEO, problems with the SPAC, problems with the share price. Dead man walking is probably the best way to put it, unfortunately. No, there's nothing good I can say. I gotta say about hydrogen transportation, which is the horse they backed, and it's the horse Toyota backed for a while as well in cars. Hydrogen no, for transportation, no. Maybe for cargo ships, maybe. But certainly not for buses or trucks or cars. Definitely not. It makes absolutely no sense. So. Anyway, Scania, as I said.
One thing.
Speaking of the Climate 21 podcast.
Sorry, go on. No, you go. I was going to say one of the things that's interesting is that the amount of work and research in materials chemistry, okay, in order to make hydrogen, even slightly competitive around storage and material science around increasing surface area for storage and things like that has its own benefits. So even if hydrogen doesn't make it as the dominant fuel for transportation and things like that, the benefits, that the insights that we've actually gained in trying to go down that route have been absolutely phenomenal. The materials chemistry around catalytics and storage and energy density have been really, really groundbreaking and will be used in other places. So they will. When we look at carbon storage, for example, the how you actually get hydrogen into a small space safely and for storage can actually be repurposed for carbon sequestration. I think that's the right word as well, because that's all around taking a gas, storing it in a matrix or in a matrix for long periods of time,
hopefully.
Yeah.
So Mohammed has said hi from Islamabad. Hi Islamabad. Hi Mohammed. How are you doing?
Hello.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Someone has said Nicola's share price is up 10%. I'm sorry, whoever you are, your name hasn't come up. You've just come up as a LinkedIn user here in the comments. That is down, I think, to the privacy settings on your LinkedIn account. If someone else knows who it is, if you drop the name in the comments there, we'll be able to credit you with the comment. I was saying about Scania and the trucks going full electric. I did for anyone who hasn't heard it, I did an episode of the Climate 21 podcast a couple of weeks ago where I interviewed a guy called Auke Hoekstra. Auke is a researcher. He leads a group of 35 PhDs in the Technical University in Eindhoven, which is one of the most advanced technical universities in the world. He leads their battery and energy division there, and we talked about it. And one of the points he said was that he has a whole group researching 40-ton 18-wheel trucks, and he had all the reasons. He mentioned all the reasons in the podcast why electric is the only way forward for them. And there's a full transcript with that podcast as well. If you don't want to listen to it, you can just find the transcript there. Okay.
Ben Withy.
Say again?
It was Ben Withy.
Okay, Ben Wibby. Okay, Ben, your name isn't coming through. As I say, I think it's a privacy setting on your LinkedIn account. Dave, thanks for telling us, and Peter too. Cool. Boeing has said it's going to deliver 100% biofuel planes by 2030. That's a I can see you kind of sighing there, Chris, and I have the same reaction. Biofuels, you have to grow typically biofuels. You have to grow a crop, and of course, the land you use to grow the crop could be land that you use to grow food, to feed people or animals for meat. So I put it in because I put the story into the list, and I probably should have taken it out. I put it in just because, I don't know, Airbus have said that they're going to have planes flying using hydrogen, as we talked about a minute ago, by 2035. So that is probably a place where hydrogen might have a future. That and energy storage from, excess from renewables, although I think that'll go batteries as well. So we'll see.
I'm conflicted about it just in general, because at the end of the day, neither Boeing nor Airbus make the engines. It's General Electric. It is companies like Rolls-Royce. The airframe itself comes from the aircraft manufacturers, and that's fine. So having Boeing commit to this doesn't mean an awful lot to me, because it's the engine manufacturer. Yes, Boeing is the purchaser of the engine, but they could be doing more and pushing their engine manufacturing partners to create better engines and battery engines and things like that. And let's face it, Boeing are coming off the back of a horrible 2 years, 2 or 3 years. I would prefer to have seen Boeing and GE or Boeing and Rolls-Royce commit to this. At the moment, this is fairly meaningless unless the engine manufacturer says, you know what, we're with you and we're going to do it. So this is just PR. For me, this is PR.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and Martha's saying she tends to agree as well, and Peter's saying he tends to agree as well. So we'll clap ourselves in the back there, folks. We're doing a great job, all of us.
Yeah, exactly.
I heard an interesting one though about the engine manufacturers, the GEs and the Rolls-Royces, because they've shifted to the power by the hour model, which means they now have a crap load of engines that they own that are doing nothing, so they're getting no revenue from them.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we talk about the outcome economy and how great it is, but it doesn't take into account global pandemic shutting down all your customers' business.
Yes.
Ouch. GE and Rolls-Royce are obviously in a world of pain at the moment from a revenue perspective. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. Eviation. This is a company I hadn't heard of before. Israeli company are making a 9-seater passenger electric airplane in 2022. Now, this is a cool story for a number of reasons. A, they've got a nice little video in there where they do a time lapse of the creation of the airframe, which is nice. It doesn't actually finish, unfortunately, so you don't actually see it, taking off or anything like that, but it is a nice construction one. And then the story itself, where they talk about the fact that electric aviation is so much cheaper than aviation based on kerosene per hour of flight. I forget the exact numbers, but it's like a fifth of the price or something like that. So the point they're making there is shorter hop flights using electric planes might become more the norm than longer hop ones, because they'll be so much cheaper. So that's an interesting one to watch. So what's Peter saying here? Which one? Oh yeah,
Power by the Hour has been around for decades.
It has, yeah. When did they start that? Was it GE or Rolls-Royce? I think it was GE did that first, wasn't it? And it's probably 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, Martha's saying she's not sure if it was fully adopted or just rolled out across specific customers. I'm not 100% sure on that myself either, Martha. Peter, you're in Air Canada. Can you comment on that? Martha's saying she's not sure if that was just a pilot, pardon the pun, or if it was rolled out across all customers. Sorry, that was terrible.
That really was. That ranks up there with dad jokes. But yeah.
But I thought this one was cool. We talked last week or the week before about Biden coming into office and the raft of executive orders that he was going to roll out.
Oh, yeah.
And, some of them around renewables and Green New Deals and things like that. But this one, and this isn't in isolation either. So what this one is saying is that the entire federal fleet of vehicles is going to be replaced with electric vehicles. It goes a bit further and says that the electric vehicles have to be made in the US and have to have X% US components within them. So, it's very much an America First policy, which is kind of sounds familiar. But, apart from that, it it sends a very clear demand signal to vehicle manufacturers that, you know what, EVs are the future. And, you know, the federal fleet consists of almost 650,000 vehicles. I think if I remember the article correctly, I think it was 645,000 vehicles.
Yep.
So, you know, that's an enormous, that's an enormous demand signal right there. So sending that message out to the market is huge. What were you thinking on that one there, Chris?
So it's fascinating because we talked about it before we went on air. You know, that doesn't include the military, and it probably doesn't include, you know, the US Post Office as well, which is another massive one. But again, it comes back to this the point you made earlier. You know, there's money to be made. You know, there's gold in them there hills, and to replace, you know, 645,000 vehicles, that is a huge investment. And yes, some of them may be conversions, some of them may be brand new vehicles and things like that. You know, there is money that's going to be made in the manufacture of the vehicles, the conversion of any vehicles, the recycling of any vehicles that can be recycled or returned back into the economy. You know, this is a massive demand signal. Yeah, it's going to kickstart a massive redistribution of assets and things like that throughout the whole supply chain and the whole economy, and it will create millions of jobs.
It will, yeah.
It will.
There are lots of startups in the space as well. I mean, Ron mentioned Nicola there a while ago, who are a startup in the space, who are a little bit unfortunate at the moment. But there are others like Rivian and Lordstown and people like that. Both of those are US based as well. There's another one at the top of my head there. I just can't think of it. Bollinger, a startup in the EV space as well. There's a few Chinese ones. Obviously, they won't be considered here. There's Tesla, obviously the incumbent. Then you have Ford and GM, both announcing big plans on their electrification front. In fact, GM changed their logo recently to have it more reflect a plug. For that very reason. So, you know, the world is going electric very much. And Peter has commented back on that, saying very much so in airlines, as in the power by the hour, components, not just the engines, but also landing gear, APUs. APUs are power units. What's the A stand for? Maybe it's airplane power units. These are the things you roll up underneath the plane while it's stopped with the engines idling, to run things like, well, so you can start the plane, I guess, but also to run things like the aircon and stuff like that. Okay, there. Martha and Peter have just become connected. We'll call ourselves a matchmaking service here, guys.
Absolutely. No, the other thing is that, you know, this you know, as you said, you know, it is an America First policy. It you know, and there is one. It feels different this time. It feels a lot more productive than the policies that came before it. Auxiliary power units.
There you
go. But yes, that's something that you know, it's a positive message, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
And Peter's in there too. Not quick enough, Peter. Dave got in there before you.
Although Peter did have to type a longer word there.
That's true.
Yeah.
So
I love this one.
Yeah, Wingcopter raised 22 million. I scanned this story a couple of times and I couldn't find out what that values the company at, because it said further down in the article that they'd raised a total of, I think, 25 million. So obviously this is round 2 and they've raised 22 million this time. So they raised 3 million in the past. We've no idea, though. It didn't mention anywhere
no, it didn't.
What that values them at. But they've raised 22 million to ramp up their delivery drone production. The drones that they're producing, they're not your typical drone. They've got wings, you know, which is unusual in many drones. Many drones are the kind of typical drone that you're used to seeing. The wings obviously help with lift, which makes them far more efficient in flight. They're a vertical takeoff drone, so they take off vertically, and then the props go through 90 degrees, which brings them forwards, which means they've got forward thrust and they've got lift from the wings. They can go something like 240 kilometers an hour, and they can carry something at the moment like 6 kilos. They were used to deliver insulin during the lockdown to islands off the north coast of Ireland, for example, in the North Sea. I presume that's Rathlin or Tory or one of those. They've been used in Africa to deliver medicines to remote places as well. So they've had trials with UPS and other delivery services, so they're getting a lot of traction, obviously. Likely need the wings for heavier loads, as Peter's commenting there. Absolutely, yeah. Hence the lift part of it, yeah. And the wings, to Peter's point, will allow them, to lift heavier loads. It said in the article 13 pounds, which is about 6 kilos. That seems to be the limit at the moment. But I mean, you have to imagine that's the 22 million is going to help them, make bigger wings and up that 6 kilos to 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, 30 kilos, and beyond. It's we're heading into a fascinating time in terms of deliveries, because again, these kind of delivery vehicles are fully electric, remotely controlled because they go beyond line of sight. It is a fascinating time. I have a drone here myself. It's all folded up now, so you can't see the shape of it, but it's a little Mavic Mini 2. Mavic Mini 2.
I've seen the pictures. I saw the pictures. Yeah, there's some phenomenal stuff.
Treated myself for Christmas, and I had never had a drone before and always interested in it, so I just thought I'd get one just to try it out and see what it's like, and it's great fun, I gotta say. And the cameras in them are amazing. It's a 4K camera in a sub 250 gram drone. It's just spectacular.
Do you know where I love this story, or this one is I've been watching a couple of YouTube videos and things like that around reforestation and actual remote sensing and GIS and the use of drones in those efforts. And I think recently a company set the world record for the number of trees planted in remote locations, and they used a fleet of drones. Actually, so the drones flew a pre-programmed course and literally just dropped the seeds into the ground. And obviously, some of those will germinate and some of them will not. But the point about it is that it means because they're using drones, they don't actually need to provide the infrastructure to get to those remote places to plant. They literally just fly over, wait it so that it then digs into the ground, and it means that even if you get a 10% success rate, it's still cheaper and requires less effort and less energy to plant than if you were doing it with putting an infrastructure to go and get to these places and then plant them manually.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And you got to no, it's gone. I had a comment about that there, and it sounded sensible to me when I was thinking it, and it's just gone straight out of my head.
Yeah,
but Peter's talking about Antonov-sized drones. That would be impressive to see. Mine is more ant-sized than Antonov-sized. I gotta say.
Yeah.
I used to love watching the Antonov land in Montreal and unload massive payloads to Bombardier and then lift off. Yeah, that must be impressive. I used to live very close to Seville Airport, and the flight path into Seville Airport passed by my front window. So if you're not familiar, Seville Airport has an Airbus factory right there on the tarmac. So very often you'd see the big belugas coming in dropping parts for Airbus. They in Seville they make the A400, the prop cargo plane. So seeing those belugas coming in, they are unbelievable. Just seeing them flying across like that, spectacular. Miscellaneous. We're down to our last couple of stories.
Yep.
Coming up on the hour, kind of what you were talking about, Chris, with the drones, except this time it's using satellites, using satellite imaging to count elephants from space. So the problem with counting elephants traditionally has been you had to charter a plane and take it up, and often you might have to, elephants don't respect borders very well unless the borders have a wall, a Trumpian border. So the elephants would wander over the borders, and of course you might have to get permission from air traffic control to cross into another country if you hadn't got it when you took off, and so on. It becomes complicated. It's also expensive. You have to charter the plane, you have to pay the fuel, the whole thing, pilot, etc., etc. But if you can take satellite information from satellites that are passing over anyway and don't care about borders, what's happening here is they're using machine learning to scan the photographs, and therefore they're able to estimate herd sizes for elephants. You can use it for conservation purposes. You can also use it for watching out for poachers and things like that. Let me go over here to the comments. Dryad Networks uses IoT for early fire detection using sensors to detect gases emitted at the very early stages of the fire. Interesting. Dryad Networks are they based out of? Are the sensors based on drones, or where's that? Where are those sensors, Martha? I'm not clear on that. And we have, thanks to the great session. What was this chap's name again? Because it's not showing up. Peter, was
Ben.
it? Ben. There we go.
Ben. Yeah. So
I think it's a profile visibility or privacy setting. Okay, Marta's coming back saying they're a startup. Dryad Networks are a startup, but where are their sensors, Marta? Is where I'm a little confused on that story. I can understand using sensors for fire detection on trees.
On trees. Like, that's cool. That's cool. So
that makes sense.
When you were talking about the elephants there not respecting borders and things like that, there, the only thing that went through my head was the Soft Border Patrol talking about fish and cows and Brexit and the land border between things. There's a funny clip here. I'll stick it in the comments. So, well, for anybody who wants to watch it, but it is absolutely hilarious. But again, yes, this is the type of thing around using artificial intelligence and remote sensing to better understand the world around us and the impact that we have on that world. Yeah. The work that's been done in image recognition. I did a project 5 years ago with a food manufacturer using remote sensing satellite imagery on crop yield prediction and using machine learning, and that was fascinating. Just being able to see how the company were then able to look at it meant that for planting, for what's the word I'm looking for deploying of weed killer and things like that, for crop maintenance, to really target those areas that actually needed it, as opposed to just blanketly doing stuff. So that was 5 years ago, and to see just the leaps and bounds in the technology, where I think it has ended up is phenomenal.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. The last story I wanted to point out today was Twitter's using a pilot to let users flag misinformation, or what they call false content. This is an interesting one. Basically, Twitter are going to try and crowdsource verification of information on the platform. They're starting with a small pilot, and they're going to try and grow it. And the veracity, people will be ranked in terms of how well they have flagged misinformation in the past, and their flagging of information will, get more trusted as they correctly flag misinformation. It's an interesting idea. It's a hard one. It's a hard one though, isn't it? Because
so look, at the end of the day, this all comes down to the liability of the platform about the content that's actually presented on, and I think it's either it's Proposition 320 or 230 or something like that, and it goes to the absolute heart of the social media companies on what their liability for things like slander and inflammatory content. And so when you see things like this, yes, I think it's an interesting experiment, but the bit that everything they're doing at the moment is actually to preserve the status quo so that they don't become liable. So every time I see things like this, I sit and think, is this actually useful? Is this actually going to change anything? Is it you trying to do something that's going to stave off your the yes, Peter, it will be. But yeah, it's one of those ones where you're sitting thinking, why? What actually are you doing? Are you putting this on us, or are you actually going to put it on yourselves?
And between the EU and the US in the next 3-4 years, we're going to see regulation around this, because there's no way, after what happened in the US, Biden isn't going to take a long, hard look at social media and, insist that something changes. And the EU, same story. If those two big blocks together roll out legislation, then something will definitely change.
Oh yeah, and it will, because there was I think it was over the weekend they talked about the relationship between Zuckerberg and Biden, and Biden has come out very firmly and said he does not like Facebook, and the Democrats absolutely have blame social media companies and disinformation for losing the 2016 election. And so now that they have the deciding vote, they basically control both houses, and it's going to be a very, very interesting time. So it is, see what's going to happen. So
I deleted my Facebook account a couple of years ago at this point, because it was nothing but a cesspool that just did nothing for me but make me angry. And I could see that Facebook themselves were not alone not doing anything to correct the situation, but in fact the opposite. They were stirring it up as much as possible, because the more outrageous posts that were on there and the more outrageous posts they could put in front of you, the more angry you got and the more engaged you became. So
exactly,
just the way I've said it to a couple of people is, I fundamentally disagree with Facebook's business model. And because I fundamentally, their business model is profiting from disseminating hatred and stoking the fans of hatred, or fanning the flames of hatred. That's what they do. They fan the flames of hatred and they profit from so doing. And I cannot get on board with that. I cannot, I can't validate that business model by adding my content to their platform. If I'm adding my content to their platform, I am saying I am okay with what you do. I'm not okay with what they do. So, boom, I shut down my account. That's it. I'm not using it anymore. Yeah. And I'm so much happier.
I know. Absolutely. I'll say it comes down to the fact that if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, and that is the bottom line, and you have to be okay with that. In terms of Twitter and things like that, as long as you make that choice willingly, then that's one thing. But there are limits. There are absolutely limits to what I will put up with, and I don't use Facebook an awful lot. I do still have my account, but that's mostly just to keep up with a couple of other people. So it is, but
I've moved my conversations away from there, so people can find me easily on Twitter and LinkedIn if they want to get in touch.
Oh yeah.
So not a problem there.
Exactly.
The social dilemma is the show
yes.
that Peter was looking for there. Well done, Martha, on remembering that. And Martha was saying, let me scroll back here a second. They're based on advertising models and keeping you engaged. Exactly. That's precisely the problem. It's like I said, it's profiting from pushing engagement by getting people pissed off, essentially. Excuse my language, but the more enraged you make people, the more engaged they become, and then you profit off that, and you just do it by fanning the flames. And they're not alone. I mean, you see YouTube doing it as well. YouTube, if you start, it's very easy on YouTube to go down a rabbit hole of videos, and they start showing you videos that you wouldn't necessarily have any interest in. And again, it can be ones like the whole QAnon thing that's going on. So I still have a YouTube account, and we're actually live streaming on YouTube right now. So maybe I got to rethink that. And good point. Martha saying as well that the social dilemma was produced by Netflix, whose business model relies on keeping the user engaged as long as possible. Yes, but
that's a subscription.
But that's different. Well, yes, it's a subscription, as you say, but also they keep the user engaged by showing them interesting content, not by getting people enraged, not by fanning the flames of disinformation,
division,
or hatred, none of that kind of stuff. I use it a lot for my alumni foundation and events and such. Yeah, I get that, Peter. I'm actually taking a course at the moment, and the course uses a lot of engagement on Facebook that I'm missing out on. So the course organizer pushes people towards a Facebook group where they have a lot of conversations and stuff. And I asked before I signed up for the group, I asked, is there any way around this? And they said, nope. And I said, can I still do the course without a Facebook account? You can, but you'll be missing out. So I've gone ahead anyway, and I've signed up and paid for the course, and I'm doing it, and I am missing out. Okay. But I also wanted to make a point to the organizer that there are people out there who don't have Facebook and who actually object to it, and you should consider another platform for things like that. And I get it as well. It's hard. There aren't many platforms for groups and events, the way that Facebook has. They've got a pretty good monopoly on that, unfortunately. So I get your point, Peter. It is tough, but I'm not going back.
Yeah, completely.
All right, we've gone over the hour again. Good God.
We have.
I keep cutting down the number of stories, thinking, okay, this time we won't go over the hour. This time we won't go over the hour, and here we go again.
Yeah, it's a target.
The other thing is we were late starting because my connection broke down, so I'm going to blame that.
Yeah, let's blame that.
All right. Everyone, thanks a million for your interest and engagement, and thank you for sticking with us as long as you have. That's great, and throwing in all the interesting comments and questions. We shall see you all again next week, same time, same bat channel, as the old expression used to go.
Absolutely.
So toodle pip, and
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Cheers.